Now in this lecture we are going to look at time and space complexity of one-dimensional array. Now as you remember, our first operation was to create an empty array. Now in case of Java, when we are creating an empty array, we are initializing array with the size of array. So this means that it will create in the memory the number of cells that we have provided. Now in this case the time complexity will take O1 time complexity because here we are just initializing the number of cells in the memory, but the space complexity will take On complexity. So here n is the number of cells in the array, because when we are declaring an array in Java, we are allocating space in the memory, and this space will allocate even if you don't have any value in the array. So as we mentioned, in Java the array cells cannot be empty, so here we have always default values, so that's why when we are creating an array it takes On complexity. Now when it comes to the inserting a value in an array, here we are just accessing the value of cell and updating it to the value that we want. So in this case we are inserting an element to the array, so we know that accessing an element in the array takes O1 time complexity, that's why updating it will take also O1 time complexity. Now the space complexity in this case will take O1 complexity because here we are not creating an extra cell, we are just updating the value of existing cell. Now the next operation is traversing a given array. Now traversing means that we are visiting each and every cell of array one by one. So this means that if the number of cells in the array is n, so the time complexity will be On, because in this case we have to visit all elements one by one. Now when we are visiting it, an extra memory is not required because now we are not doing any memory related operation, we are just accessing the elements of array n times, so that's why the space complexity will take O1. Now when it comes to the accessing a given cell, in this case it will take O1 because when we are creating an array, all elements are located in the memory and we know the physical address of these elements. So by knowing the physical address of these elements, we can directly access them. So this is the main advantage of the array, because in this case accessing any given element takes O1 time complexity because we know the physical location of these cells from upfront. Now the space complexity in this case also O1 because here also we are not performing any memory related operation. Now the next operation is searching a given value in an array. Now when we are searching a given value in an array, we are doing a linear search. So this means that we are visiting all elements one by one and checking that if this is the element that we want to find or not. So in this case, in the worst case, we can visit all elements of array and we cannot find our value. So that's why in the worst case it will take On time complexity. Now when we are doing so, like in the traversal, we are just visiting the elements of array, so this means that it will not take any extra space, so the space complexity is O1. Now the last operation is deleting a given value from an array. Now as we said before, we cannot delete any given cell from the array. We can just change the value of this cell to the default value. Now in many cases the default value will be the minimum integer value in Java. So the value of minimum integer is -2 to the power of 31. So in this case we are just updating the cell values to minimum integer value. So that's why it will take O1 time complexity. Now if you look at these operations carefully, inserting a value in an array and deleting a given value from array are almost same operation. In this case we are updating the cell value to the value that we want, and in deleting we are updating the value to the default value. So both of these operations will take O1 time complexity. Now you see that using array is very beneficial because in many cases many operation takes O1 time complexity. But it's not very efficient in case of space complexity, so if you don't have any space problem, so in this case using arrays is very beneficial. Now with this we have come to the end of one-dimensional arrays. Now from next lectures we will start to learn about another type of arrays, which is two-dimensional array. So see you in the next lecture.